So it's a very warm welcome to United Rugby Fans podcast show today to Mr. Martin Devlin over there in beautiful New Zealand. Kia ora, Martin. How are you this morning, mate?
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Wayne.
Welcome to the show. And look, a lot of people across the rugby world, they know you of the guy behind the microphone talking about all the rugby games and your fantastic description of what the rugby teams are doing in World Rugby at the moment. But a lot of them don't know about Martin Devlin, his journey with the game of rugby. So today we're going to find out a little bit about that. Got a couple of curler questions to throw at you too, Martin, about what's going on in rugby at the moment. But let's start off about your journey with the world of rugby. When did you first get connected to our beautiful game of rugby?
Well, can I say, for a start, thank you very much for asking me this. I'm very flattered by it. I do wonder whether anyone really does care. I'm a guy who's been behind the microphone for 27 years, sports broadcasting, and been in the media business for about 35 years. And, so I'm not sure whether or not what I've got to say means anything to anyone. So I will blather on as I always do, my friend, and hopefully make some kind of sense about it. So where did I start with rugby? Look, as a kid, like everyone does in New Zealand, and I didn't play rugby. I'm not going to lie about that. I played at school, went to a Catholic school, so at primary school I played, and we used to have these things called overs, and for my generation, I don't have to explain, but to the young folk I do. So when you go to a Catholic school, you wear a uniform, and that uniform has to be in pristine condition. And so we lived in Upper Hutt, it rained a hell of a lot, and so the fields were always muddy. So at lunchtimes and playtimes, you used to have to take a whole lot of old clothes and leave them in your locker and put those on. When we played bull rush, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And we played rugby a lot. We played softball, but during the winter, we always played rugby. And I was a little kid. I was one of the smallest, actually, when I went to college until I started growing. And so it didn't take very long to figure out when you played bull rush and when you played rugby, that maybe it wasn't the game for me. So I was more into round ball football, played a lot of competitive squash, played a lot of tennis, but in team sports, it was round ball football. So I can't lay any claim at all that I played a lot of rugby. I could kick a ball though, you see. So, that was why I probably went and started playing football. I could always kick it a reasonable distance and put boot to ball, but I got no claim at all to anything about actually any experience in getting out there and doing what I admire the rest of the players that do this.
Fantastic. So when's your early memories of watching, say, I guess it was the All Blacks, was the big first draw card in your life? What was the first memory of the All Blacks?
75, I remember it clearly. Back in those days, we had one TV channel in this country. I think maybe we might have had two, but I think it was just one. And the All Blacks were playing Scotland in what's now called the water polo test at Eden Park. We were in white jerseys, which is bizarre. So the first game I ever saw the All Blacks play, we were in white jerseys. And Dad always said that the BG Williams, they tried to drown him after he scored a try. He went sliding in for a try, Brian Williams, one of my favourite ever players. And honestly, the water was this deep. Eden Park these days, beautiful drainage and everything. But back in those days, the water just pooled, completely different stadium. And it had been, we lived in Wellington, but it just obviously been torrential rain like it does in Auckland. And when you watch the pictures of that test, it's just incredible. They wouldn't play it these days. You wouldn't have a surface like that anyway. So after that, we won that game. And then the next year was 76, and we toured South Africa, the All Blacks. And so that was the first experience of getting up at 3 a.m, cheese on toast and hot Milos, and Dad with his mates in the lounge, and me and my bro and my big brother, and sitting there. And, here's a young kid. I was only 11 or 12 or something at the time, and your heart breaks because you lose those games. And, as a young sports fan, you don't think your team's ever going to lose, and the goddamn refs and the hard fields and Joe Morgan's tries. So I remember all of that. We lost that series 3-1. Always been bitter about it. And then the next year, 77. So these are the ones that really stick in my memory to start with. 77, the Lions came to town, and they toured New Zealand for about 3 or 4 months, Mark. You probably remember a fantastic tour, about 30 matches. And the first test was at Athletic Park in Wellington. And the All Blacks came and trained at our school, St. Pat's Silverstream, because where the school is to the main road, the number one field is down and you can't see it. So these days they, put fences and, black polythene around so you can't see. But those days they trained there because no spies could see from the road. However, they let the whole school out to watch the All Blacks train. So when you're 13 years old and you get out of maths class to go and watch the All Blacks train, I mean, what a treat that was. And so those experiences, 75, 76, 77, bedded it in for me that this was my team. And I've always loved this team.
I was at the game in Auckland, the flooded test. I was sitting 10 metres behind where Brian Williams scored the try. I could have reached out and touched the guy. But I tell you what, it was also my defining moment as well. And I want to share that with you while you're on the show today, because the day before that game, we were staying with my auntie and uncle in Mount Roskill in Auckland. It was absolutely pouring down cats and dogs. And we thought, is there a chance they might even cancel this game? Because we all knew what was going to happen at Eden Park. But it didn't happen, and we all trenched along with our raincoats and the old oilskins back in the day. And we sat there, and I was the happiest little kid in New Zealand, because I had my grandfather on one side, I had my father on the other side. It was the first time we'd been to an international match together as a family, and I had my hero Brian Williams scoring a try in front of me. So you can imagine how happy I was as a little rugby kid in New Zealand on that particular day, even though the atrocious conditions that went forth as well. So there you go. We both share a memory on the same game. And you've been talking about your journalism in the world of rugby. I'm interested to know, what's the number one thing the fans get wrong about the rugby media? Is there something that sticks out to you that the fans always get wrong about the rugby media?
No, look, I started in music radio. So when Radio Sport started in 1998 and I came up from Wellington to do the breakfast show, I made no secret of the fact that because I hadn't had a sports background in media, and I'm not a journalist. I've never been a journalist. I mean, I've done probably, I think I counted about 75,000 interviews now, so maybe I might qualify in that because of that. But I just made no secret of the fact that I was just a guy yelling on the couch or going to the games like everyone else, but I had a microphone and I was a broadcaster. So in terms of what the style was or what I wanted to do, what I wanted to portray, how I wanted that show to be. And you got to remember, it was hugely rugby, and that's in New Zealand. When you do talk radio, it's rugby, and rugby league, and the Warriors have now come into it. You do a bit of cricket and so forth. You do a few other sports, but rugby has been the number one. It's always the thing that gets the audience and gets people going. I don't know whether people get anything wrong, Mark, because to me, it's just opinions. We don't play the game. We aren't in the camp. And so we speculate a lot. We think we know a hell of a lot more than probably what we do know. At the same time, I think we also know a hell of a lot. And I credit fans in this country for having a really good rugby nous. People watch the sport. They're engaged in the sport. They go and their kids play. They play themselves. They go to clubs. I've always loved my club rugby. And so, I used to spend a lot of time going to Athletic Park with Dad, and, that stomp up to, Adelaide Road, it was full of hope. And then Wellington had shit the bed, and we'd come, silently down the road. I'm never going back, he'd say, never going back, never going to watch that shit again, never going back. And then, 2 weeks later, we'd be up there again doing it. I don't know whether people get, in a long-winded answer, and you'll get a few of these from me, whether anyone gets anything wrong. You can get the score wrong. The rest of it, we're just debating and we're just talking and we're just engaging, aren't we? So I kind of like to diffuse that and pop that balloon. And I've always tried to treat everyone that engages with us, be it comments-wise through the podcast, talk back on the radio or anything like that, as the same. I'm not an expert, never been an expert. I'm a guy that watches a lot and got a lot of opinions about it, and I welcome yours, and hopefully you welcome mine, and hopefully at the end of it we can go back to the bar, get another jug, and agree to disagree if we agree to disagree.
I'll tell you why I asked the question, because I see the landscape of rugby pundits and rugby fans really coming together at the moment in this day and age that we live in. I started my podcast sitting in a park here in Cancun in Mexico talking about the great game that I love. But I've got nowhere near the experience in radio that you have and other people have who have started rugby podcasts as well. And I look up to guys like you because you've got the rugby knowledge at a level that I perhaps will never, ever have. And I think that's something to be admired within the game itself. But I really asked you the question because there's guys like me that I guess purvey a little bit more of this title of a rugby fan versus a rugby pundit. And I know that you don't call yourself an expert, but you are very humble as well in your outgoings in terms of where you stand within the rugby world. Your little black book of people that you're going to have Murray Maxted on the show after me today. There you go. You're connecting straight away to a legendary All Black. And I think that's something... Privileged, I think that's something that we really need to recognise, that those two worlds are converging. And there's a space for both of them. There's a space for the fan who just wants to have a good old chat about rugby. And there's a space for people like you who have the legendary talent to be able to communicate and articulate in a way with your history within the game. And I think that's really good for rugby as a rugby fan, and that's what this channel is all about. So I thank you on behalf of a lot of rugby fans across the world in terms of the knowledge, the experience, and the love of the game that you share with us every day on your channel. And if you're watching today on United Rugby Fans podcast show, go over to DSPN, hit the subscribe button, join Martin's channel, and listen to a real true professional talk about the game in a way that very few people are able to do on this planet. So there you go. I'll give you that to move on.
Oh, that's very kind, mate. Look, the experience you get during the broadcasting is something that's like any job, that once you've been, it's a hard-earned experience. You make a lot of mistakes. You're out there in public, so, people remind you of those mistakes. But it's something that I really work hard at doing, and have always really tried hard to be good at it. Other people will judge me on that. In terms of I call the talent or the people that we can get on the show. Again, that's a real privilege. Over the years, it's New Zealand, and it's one of those things that unless you live in New Zealand, it's hard to understand, mate. But you get to meet All Blacks. You can see them in the supermarket. You might be in the car yard, and there's one guy standing there. And a lot of the past players, over a period of time, I've bumped into or done MC functions with, or things like this, or interviewed over a number of years. And what happens is, naturally there are those that you gravitate towards who you have a bit more in common, and you end up having some kind of relationship with them. And look, I've always tried to maintain a real distance between the current players and the work that I've done on radio and so forth, because I kind of feel that we are on opposite sides of the fence, and maybe sometime in the future we, I might be able to sit down and so forth and see what happens from there. But certainly the past players and that, I never ever think of it as anything other than a real treat to get these guys on who have been there and done it and won it, and to be able to call people up and ask them to come on, and they come on. It's always a real buzz. I never get used to it. I always love every second of it. So yeah, that to me is part of the joy of doing this, that I can talk to Max. So we had Sean Fitzpatrick on the program a few weeks ago, and just to think that, hey, I can talk to Sean, and if I bump into him, he says, "Hi, Marty, how are you?" That never ceases not to blow me away, because who the hell am I? I'm a guy, some dork from Upper Hutt, mate. So that part of it is really special.
Good stuff. Now, we started our organisation because there's so many fans across the world that are not happy with the state of rugby in 2025 across the world for a whole lot of different reasons. It could be the lack of investment in the game in Tier 2 nations and Tier 3 nations. It could be the rules of the game that are getting far too complicated for new fans to come and understand what's going on in the game. It could be on the officiating, and of course, throughout this year's autumn international series, in fact, throughout the whole year, we've seen every weekend something happening within the officiating of the game that's causing problems. So next question I've got for you is, those guys from yesteryear, the Sir Colin Meads and the Wilson Winarays and that, how do you think they would see the game to...
Always stand when we say Sir Colin, mate.
Sorry, mate. I should have got up.
Always stand when we say Sir Colin. Yeah.
So how do you think those guys see the game that we've got today in front of us?
Look, I think from my perspective, I don't know anyone who plays this game, referees this game. And I'm going to put the administrators to one side, because I actually think that there's a lot of administrators now who, to me, aren't rugby people. They're corporate people as opposed to rugby people. I think anyone that in the past has been in the administration has normally come through from playing to club rugby to provincial rugby to get in these positions. It's not the case these days. I mean, these days you've got a fancy-dancy CV because you've done this or done that. Is it a stepping stone to another job? I'm very suspicious of a lot of the people that end up on these boards. We had a great example a couple of years ago where one of the board members of New Zealand Rugby said, it's really difficult to this was during the All Blacks, it's really difficult to kind of keep up with what's going on. What do you mean, you dick? I mean, there's a game every weekend. How difficult is it? And so I think when you got to separate the now from the past in this, since the game has turned professional, especially in the last 10 years. But again, a long-winded answer, I think that a lot of people that I talk to who've had a lot of experience in the game find that it is overcomplicated. Having said that, I'm not sure that anyone's trying to make it overcomplicated. I think everyone really is, and I would hope on the same page, wanting it to be a great game to watch, wanting it to be a game that flows, wanting it to be a game that everyone can still play, wanting it to be a game that if you do sit down and watch it, you're going to have an enjoyable experience. And I look at all the critique and the comments about this, and most of them I think are geared towards the same thing. I kind of look at it like it's like the old switchboard, when the lady used to sit there, and I can't even probably say that anymore, and plug the phone in. You get a call, plug the phone in. We're all going towards the same point, just maybe have different ways of doing it. I think it can be a really frustrating game to watch. Having said that, I thoroughly have enjoyed those autumn internationals. I thought the quality of the rugby was brilliant, and the frustrations are because the rules are complicated these days. That's because it's perhaps the only sport in the world that is interpretive, and that the referee can look at a situation and personally interpret what has happened and what their decision should be. Cricket has let a little bit of this slip in with this stupid technology, the DRS. I believe that the umpire should be able to, the umpire's on the field, the umpire's behind the wickets, the guy's got a lot of experience, or the girl's got a lot of experience. What they see, what they hear is normally 9 times out of 10 right, perhaps even 9.99 times out of 10 right. And yet now we don't trust them. You look at baseball umpires, for example. How often do they get it wrong? When ball hits glove, foot goes to pad. It's just incredible. I love my baseball. When you watch baseball, the split-second nature of this, 99 times out of 100, they get it right. Perhaps 199 out of 1,000, they get it right. Why? Because it's experience. Their eyes tell them something, their ears tell them something, and they get it right. The more we take that away from the human, I think the worse it's actually getting. And I see this with VAR and football as well. Unless technology is 100% accurate, and you can't guarantee that, unless it's 100% accurate, get rid of it, as far as I'm concerned. Get rid of it under the microscopic way that we use it. Sure, it's valuable at certain times and certain things, but this whole rewinding the tape and the TMO coming in and going back and things, look, rugby's an imperfect game played by imperfect people, refereed by an imperfect referee with a ball that does crazy things. How on earth do you possibly think that, you are going to be able to absolutely guarantee that you're going to get it right, no matter how many camera angles we put on it, no matter how many replays that you see of it? How many times do we sit there at the end of a rugby test and argue about whether or not the TMO got that right? So the answer is to get rid of that person, or get rid of the way that that person is used. That's what I think is to solve it. Essentially, to me, it's still a fabulous game, mate. It's about a guy that picked a ball up and ran with it. And that's what we want to see. We want to see pin your ears back. We want to see sweeping movements. We want to see crunching tackles. I still want to see hard-ass scrums. I want to see the technical side of a line-out. I love all of this stuff. But at the same time, it's meant to be a free-flowing game. And yet now we've got it to the point of round ball football, where you score a try and you can't celebrate. You've got to sit there like this and wait to see, what the technology is going to tell you. I think that's where the frustration is. I don't think the frustration's with the game. I think the frustration's with what they're trying to do to the game, if that makes sense.
So you're an advocate for getting rid of the TMO?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the TMO is there. I think get rid of what they're instructing the TMO to do. Leave the referee to decide. Look, one of the best refereeing performances we saw of the Autumn Internationals was from Holly Davidson, who was one of the first referees in the world to honestly go, oh, I got that wrong. Can I have a look at it? Actually, now I'm going to get it right. The technology worked in that case. But do we really want the game stopped for 10 minutes while we're doing this? I'm not so sure people do.
So picking out of the Autumn International Series, give us a couple of your most favourite moments that didn't include the All Blacks this year in the Autumn Internationals.
South Africa's second half against France. For that, and I said at the time afterwards that they are 2 scores better than every other team in the world. That was unbelievable. That to regroup with 14 men. And I'm not going to argue about all these red cards, because this is what I mean about the technology. You're talking about split-second movements of guys who are 100 and something kilos running at 20 Ks, and then you're asking them to frame by frame their body movements, because that's how we actually judge it, frame by frame. I'm always a big advocate that if the TMO is going to be used real time only, if you can't decide in real time, let the referee decide. You can't frame by frame it, because the world doesn't exist in frame by frame. The world exists in real time. That second half performance from South Africa to monster that French side was just extraordinary. I also, as much as it pains me, but the South Africans were just brilliant right throughout. The way they continued to scrum against Ireland, and that was, in some ways it was cruel, but my God, I was sitting there just wishing that was the All Blacks doing that. You're down to 13 men. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to scrum you again. You're down to 12. Guess what? We're going to do it again. It was just the mindset of what they were doing. I thought the England-Argentina game was fabulous. I I really feel for Wales. God, I feel for Wales. I grew up like you did, when that 77 Lions team was based around Wales, Mark. This was a legendary, country playing the game. I thought that France against Australia, I thought the second half that France put on against Australia was a clinic as well. And I also, as much as I hate to say it, I thought what England did to us in the second half, as embarrassing as it was for us, that was eye-opening. I mean, that is an England side that, a couple of years ago at the World Cup, when we were there in Paris, and, the fans wanted Borthwick out. They were chanting, they wanted him out as England bumbled their way through to the semi-finals and actually played bloody well in that tournament, probably played better than what most people thought they would. For them to turn that around and be where they are now, which is where we should be, they've overtaken us now, which is just, you sit there and you're just on gobsmacked by it. You think, how did England, after what we saw 2 years ago, get to where they are now? That's where we should be. I thought that was a performance that was one of the standout efforts their second half against us as well. So again, lots to celebrate, mate. Every weekend I've sat there and I've just thought, wow, I'm getting up in the morning. I've got a game to watch. At 9 o'clock, you've got a breakfast game to watch. Ireland versus us on a Sunday morning. Fabulous. So as I say, look, I enjoy it. But then the job afterwards is you got to sit there and analyse it and theorise it and criticise it and everything else. That's a separate bit of it. I can still really love it as a fan, mate, just watching it going, yeah, that's a great game of sport. And that's why I thoroughly enjoyed us playing Wales. I just thought it was a great game of rugby to watch.
Yeah, that's great to hear that, because a lot of us in this industry where we're doing this, recollection of games and all the rest of it, sometimes we're so focused on making sure we get all the points of the games that we take away that enjoyment. And I purposely now, I don't review some of the games because I just want to go and watch them as a rugby fan. And one of my most happiest memories of this past weekend was watching the Spain under 18-year-olds win the European under 18 competition for the first time in the history of Spanish rugby. And that was a huge milestone for rugby in the country of Spain. It's something that's going to lift that country up into the future. And the Spanish national team, as you probably know, are already doing a great job of doing that. And that's what's really buzzing me about rugby across the world at the moment. While the majority of us have got the lights on the big games between the big nations, our great game is doing well in a lot of parts of the world. And United Rugby fans, we want to showcase that more because it's really important. Now, to ask you the next set of questions is in relation to what's going on in New Zealand rugby, because a lot of people that tune into our show and your show, they listen to us talking about the All Blacks. It's the All Blacks this, it's the All Blacks that. Yes, we talk about NPC and Super Rugby sometimes, but what's happening down in Invercargill? What's happening in Dunedin and the local clubs? How's grassroots rugby in New Zealand through your eyes today, Martin?
Oh, it's a question that should be directed to those fat cats at New Zealand Rugby, and the answer is they wouldn't have a clue, because they've never been to these places, never been to these clubs. I went. It's broken, no question, and it needs serious fixing. And I'm not so sure that those in charge are the people that are the right people to be able to do that. They talk a lot of cliches, they write a lot of press releases, they pat themselves on the back a lot. They'll bring you percentages and statistics. Go and visit a rugby club. Go and ask the people at a rugby club. And when I say the people, I mean those tireless, beautiful human beings who volunteer, who pour pints, who pick up the tackle bags, who clean the changing rooms out, who make sure it's all locked and everything, and have got a big smile on their face when you go there. And those are the people that have always been there with New Zealand Rugby, and now the bedrock of New Zealand Rugby. Most clubs in this country are really struggling financially, struggling to get young kids playing, struggling to keep the doors open. A lot of clubs have merged, and especially in the rural areas and the provincial areas. I suppose it's a sign of the times, you could say, but at the same time, it's a worrying sign of the times. I've got a mate who's heavily involved. He's a chairman of one of the clubs on the North Shore here in Auckland. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to bust his cover, but last year when the Silver Lake money came out, or the year before, New Zealand Rugby is sitting there rubbing themselves all like, they were given this money to this and $2 million to the clubs and all of this. He said, Martin, we were given $8,000. He said, and told that we have to change all our changing rooms now into gender, I don't know, what do you call it, gender neutral changing rooms or whatever it is, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but he said, what do you think $8,000 do? It does. He says, that gets the builder around to quote. He said, the job's going to cost over $250,000. Where do we fundraise that from amongst everything else that we're fundraising? So he said, we ended up handing our $8,000 to a club up north, who $8,000 to them is a hell of a lot of money. He said to us, it's just, we now have to go back to our members, back to those that support us, and ask people who have businesses and trades and everything else to come and do it again for free. Mm-hmm. I did a gig at the Coorau Club a couple of years back, 125th anniversary down there, mate. And this was Richie McCaw's first club. And I was asked down there to help and to interview Richie on stage. This is the privilege of doing what, I do as a job. I mean, it's just enormous. I get to sit with, and I paid my own way down there. I didn't get paid for this. I paid my own way down there. Me and the girl went down there, and just because I was asked to do it, and I said, yeah, I'll come and give you a hand. I sit there and I sat with him on stage for half an hour, just joyous. And there were 300 people live in that place. All of them were in the club that night, in the town hall that night. They raised 45 grand. Amazing amount of money for that club. There were matches on all day. Every single person there was working. They were making food. They were tidying up afterwards. Just, heart and soul people in New Zealand doing something really good for their community. And I asked them, when's the last time you saw somebody from the Highlands or somebody from Otago Rugby, somebody from New Zealand? They just laughed. Never seen them. And this is the real problem that New Zealand rugby has. We have a lot of people earning a crap load of money in Wellington, and they can all justify their jobs and justify their salaries and their email trees and their constant meetings and their business class this and their 5-star hotel that. But really, where is the game at the moment? Club rugby's struggling. The NPC was called not fit for purpose by the current CEO. Well, since he called it that, what's he done about it? Super Rugby, a lot of engagement, a lot of figures up, great comp this year, still really struggling for crowds, really struggling. I interviewed Avon Lee the other day, CEO of the Hurricanes. He's just, stepping away after 10 years. He said it is just such what he calls a challenging environment. It means it's hard ass out there to try and get money and balance the books every week. And, when you've got professional sides that are struggling to do that, what does that mean? Everything's been poured towards the apex of the pyramid, the All Blacks. Everything is poured towards that, which is why the All Blacks have to succeed, which is why, constantly as a fan, I'm demanding that they succeed and that demanding that they keep winning, Mark, because I don't want to see the All Blacks being the Harlem Globetrotters of world rugby and they're trotted around to play the LA Lollylickers and the Texas Tugboaters and we go out there and we do the dance and we play the game. It's all just rubbish. It's all just PR rubbish is what it is. The All Blacks is about winning. And if they don't win, well, then no money comes in and we don't generate the money that's supposedly meant to trickle down. But it's like the government telling us constantly, just sit there, ladies and gentlemen, vote for us and the economy will come right and it'll trickle down. Well, I've been voting since 1984. When's the trickle down coming, mate? It's never bloody come, has it? And New Zealand rugby's like that too. So again, you're in a privileged position as an administrator. Get off your butt, go and actually watch a game. Go and actually talk to people. Figure it out. That's what your job. If you can't figure it out, then get off the train and give it to somebody else. We changed the board of New Zealand rugby last year. When I say we didn't do it. They did it. And apparently everyone that was involved in provincial rugby in the provinces wasn't good enough to be on that board. You can't tell me that people who actually live in rural New Zealand and provincial New Zealand who have gone through that system of club rugby and NPC provincial rugby and run these unions on a shoestring don't have acumen, ideas, and the heart to be able to actually make good decisions for this sport in this country. But they don't have the corporate CV. You know what I mean? We've got a myriad of problems. And I'm not sure that those people are actually interested in fixing them, whether they can actually fix them, whether they have what it takes to fix it. At the moment, we've got a board that's actually elected on gender. 4 members of the board have to be women out of 9, which is just insane. I'm not saying that, women shouldn't be on the board. Hell, if the best 9 rugby brains in New Zealand were 9 women, great. Fix the bloody sport. But if you can't get 4 women if the best 9 brains don't include 4 women, well, then why should 4 women be on the board? This doesn't make sense to me. Oh, you sexist pig, I'll get called. No, it's not. It's just simply absolutely the most basic logic there is. If you want this to be the best, you pick the best people to do it, don't you?
Yeah.
Regardless, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think there's a lot of, again, a long-winded answer, you'll get those from me, but there's a shitload of problems, mate.
So grassroots rugby in New Zealand, you're giving us this picture that it's in dire straits. If you had the magic wand, what would you do to fix it?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got to go and talk to those people that are actually there doing it. And they've got the answers and they've got the experience. I can't sit here in my high chair saying I know what the answer is, but I think that there are people out there that do have answers and do have solutions to it, but they're not being asked and they're not being included.
Do you think we're starting to see the impact of this on All Black performances now? Do you think it's got that far up the food chain from what's happening on the grassroots of New Zealand rugby that it's actually affecting?
Absolutely do. Absolutely do. I think that the attitude of some of the players, I'm not sure that the work rate is there. I'm not sure that, they just because you get paid doesn't mean you're a professional. I think that the system is broken in terms of, coming out of school, going into an academy. Look, some of these players have never booked a dentist appointment, never taken their car in for a warrant. Arrive at an airport, somebody gets their bags, put them on a bus, and you know what it was like in the old days when you travelled overseas, mate. And we didn't have a cell phone. You had to get a map out your back bloody pocket and actually figure it out. And, we've got a lot of guys on a rugby field who can't figure things out in the heat of the moment. Well, is that reflective of the fact because in a lot of their life, they've never had to figure anything out because there's somebody there doing it for them? I don't know. Can you draw that and tie that in a bow? I think there's probably something in that argument. I hear it all the time. That where's the independent thinking? Where is the on the spot being able to problem solve? Well, you don't have that unless you've actually physically gone through it. You can't teach it on a whiteboard. We've all got children. What's the one thing that you want to install into them? Confidence, right? Confidence to be themselves, to actually be able to make good decisions, to be able to, when the shit hits the fan, figure it out quickly and actually do what they need to do. And you try and empower them with this. Well, if you're the kind of parent that all you do is constantly the parachute parent, everything they do, you're there to solve it for them. Well, when something happens, do they have what it takes inside to be able to do that for themselves? I think that's the parallel with professional sports people. You've got to be able to reach inside. When you've had a carpet ride and you've gone from school, academy and everything else, and you've been well paid and you've got the pretty girls and you've got all the Instagram followers and everything else, what about the guy Neil Barnes, the Taranaki coach, is a great guy to talk to about this because he's of that mindset. I get a lot of my, sort of what I say, I'm probably paraphrasing him a lot. He says that when he gets players for his team, the first thing he finds out about them is who they are, what they've done. And the first thing he wants to see them do is a good day's work. Mm-hmm. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I want them out there concreting. I want them out there fencing. I want them out there on the farm. I want them to be able to prove to me that when all of the la-la rock star goes, who are they after that? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a real merit in that kind of argument. Mm-hmm. That you need other things in your life as balance. And that's not playing PlayStation after you finish training, Mark. Do you know what I'm talking about? Am I making any sense here?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So are we losing young New Zealand boys and girls to other sport? Are we seeing them go to football?
Yeah.
Are we seeing them go to rugby league as a result of this?
Yeah. I just think that this is changing times. Look, when I grew up, as I said, I played round ball football, soccer at school. I was a soccer puff. And that's what we were called. We were called soccer puffs. I was in the debating team as well, so I was a double puff. We weren't allowed to play soccer at St. Pat's Silverstream. We didn't have a field. We had to go and train at another school. We were, wearing rugby jerseys. You didn't even have a proper strip. Mm-hmm. So that's all changed now. And football in this country with the Phoenix and with AFC, now you've got a pathway. Soccer was always the number one sport in this country for kids under 16. But when they got to 16, there's nothing else for them after that. Well, now there is. Basketball is massive in this country because, the influence of the NBA. And a lot of parents, I think, look at these other sports and think, do I want my kid at 11 or 12 years old to get a busted knee, to be concussed, all of that kind of stuff? Rugby league has become incredibly popular as well. It probably always was, but it just has much more of a profile now. There is a lot more options. A lot of friends of my children, probably about 20 of them, ended up going on scholarships to the United States, playing all kinds of sport. I know kids that are over there playing water polo at the moment, playing tennis, playing all kinds of different things. 20 years ago, that wouldn't have been the case. Mm-hmm. So it's a naturalness, but, rugby still has a huge place in this country sports-wise because it is our national game, and I think a lot of kids still grow up wanting to be there. But, if you don't, and you can't, there's a hell of a lot more options out there for you as well. So I think it's a good thing. I just think that rugby's got to get smarter, that's all.
Glad you brought up the word pathways, because that's something that I've been harping on about this year in terms of making sure that these young guys who are on the peripheral of All Black selection understand that there really is an opportunity for them to go to the big dance. And when I look at players like Revis Rahana from Canterbury and I look at Josh Jacob from Taranaki, a lot of me thinks, well, they should have got a chance to go not only on Jamie Joseph's tour, I think they should have been implemented somewhere within the All Black mainframe environment during the year, just to give them that taste of where their ambitions lie, other than the potential of us losing them to other countries and them going offshore to ply their trade. Do you agree with that, or do you think there's a strong pathway for those young players to see their pathway into the All Blacks, like a Ruben Love, like a Josh Jacob and those others?
Yeah, the other thing is that, just because they look great playing NPC and Super Rugby doesn't mean they're international class players. And we've seen the evidence of that this year. So I'm not so sure that it is just a 2+2 equation. I think there's plenty of opportunity there. All of us would have liked to have seen, new players blooded. But at the same time, we're not South Africa. We have a different way of doing things. And I really do empathise with New Zealand Rugby on this, that, if they open it up and say everyone can go and play overseas, at the moment they can't sell Super Rugby outside of New Zealand. No one wants to watch it. And, talking to Avon Lee the other day, he said, the fact that we lose our star players are going off on sabbaticals, going and playing, he said, it's bottom line stuff. He said, that means another 2,000 people don't turn up to the stadium because that guy's not playing. And that costs us. So New Zealand Rugby are in a rock and a hard place with this. Sure, let's just let all our best players go overseas. Great. Well, are you going to then sit down and watch the Blues and the Chiefs with a whole lot of guys that you've never heard of? You want to see Damien McKenzie play that game, don't you? You want to see the superstars playing that game. So, yeah, I'm not so sure it's that easy an equation. And look, we did it with the Kiwis for years, mate. I remember that, let's pick all these guys who are playing in England. Great, but they come back and play for New Zealand, be duds. So, just because you're playing overseas doesn't mean that all of a sudden you are of the quality that we need you to be. So I think that there's merit in the argument, but I don't think it's just wholesale, open it up and let everyone go. And the other thing is that, how many places are available in these professional leagues and teams overseas? Is the door open for 50 All Blacks, is it? I don't think so. Right at the moment, how many of our players would actually be wanted? How many of them genuinely do other teams want? I'm not so sure that when you go through that All Black squad that, 75% of them are going to be required. So, yeah, I don't think it's an easy thing to figure. But at the same time, you kind of think that in 10 years' time, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see that rule changed. And they'll change it as they need to. They'll change it for Richie Mwanga next year. He'll go on the tour of South Africa. No matter what the rules are, New Zealand Rugby make the rules and change them if they want to.
So why is it that the French Rugby Union can get 30,000 people along to a Division 2 game in a weekend and get massive crowds like that to games where star players are not involved?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? So, they've got 60 million people in the country, I suppose. You've got to remember we've only got 5.5 million here. So it's a hell of a lot easier when your population's 12 times. But yeah, it depends. I think in France, a lot of it is where it is, what town it is, what the affiliation people have to that club, that team, those kind of things.
So we've come to the end of another All Black season this year, and I think there's a lot of things that you and I are on the same page with. What's your 60-second review of the All Blacks this year and how they've evolved over 2024, or have they?
I gave them a C+ for the year. I don't think we're any better than last year. I think there's some real positives, though, out of the team this year, including beating South Africa, which is a milestone win for us. And that says to me that we are capable on our day of beating whoever is put in front of us. However, the entire year of 10 wins and 3 losses has to be overshadowed by those defeats. And if you don't understand that, you don't really understand All Black rugby. It's not about a win percentage. Great, we won 10, we lost 3. Who did we lose to? How did we lose? What is the context around those losses? When you suffer your biggest ever loss in over 100 years in a year, that is a history-making moment no side in any sport wants. That was an embarrassment. That's number one. Getting turned over like that by England, who are clearly a better team than us. We were second in the world last year. We're not second in the world this year. That's another moment you have to mark. Losing to Argentina in such a bumbling performance after playing pretty damn well the week before, again. So you've got to isolate and separate those out. I think that we've blooded a lot of players, which is good. And I do think that we've got the talent there. I seriously question the coaching structure at the moment. I believe in Scott Robertson, and I don't want to change him as coach, and I want to make that clear. But I really do think that the rest of whoever he has around him needs to undergo a thorough review, and we have to be honest and we have to be brutal about this, because we've got a World Cup 2 years' time, we've got South Africa next year and a massive rugby season with the Nations Cup, and we've got to get it right. And sometimes in sport, you get told you're not good enough or you aren't the right guy, and that has to happen. And if they do a big review and they decide that, okay, everything is okay, well, we're all sitting there going, it's not okay, because we haven't really improved from game number 1 to game number 13. We've had moments during each game, bits and pieces, but we haven't put in an emphatic All Black performance in the whole year. So, you've just got to sit down and be realistic about this. And it's not being mean. It's not, this is the whole point. We get in New Zealand in this mentality, right? You can't tell somebody that they, perform badly. They're going to need 2 weeks off and a support puppy. It's not. This is professional bloody sport. Look at Grant Dalton and Team New Zealand. The only thing they care about is winning. I'm not sure the All Blacks have that mentality at the moment, and they need to get back there, because if we don't get that mentality back, we're going to be staring up at South Africa for the next 10 years.
Martin Devlin, always a privilege to have you on our show. So thank you for joining us on United Rugby Fans podcast today. And I'm sure we'll speak again in the not too distant future. Thanks, Martin.
Hopefully I made some sense there. Thank you very much for watching if you have been.
So there we go. A great chat with Martin Devlin today. I hope you enjoyed it, giving us some great insights to what's actually happening to New Zealand rugby on the ground, some of the things that he thinks needs to be improved about the game, and also the administration of it across New Zealand rugby. Now, if you want to stick around, please hit the subscribe button. We've got lots more amazing interviews coming up from across the world of rugby. We're going to be talking to rugby fans, rugby journalists, rugby coaches, rugby players. It's all going to happen here on United Rugby Fans podcast show. So I would love your company. If you want to join our family across the world, you can also sign up to be a member of United Rugby Fans. Just send me an email to the email address on the screen right now. It's absolutely free, and we'll keep you up to date with what we're doing to give you the voice back in the game of rugby across the world. Now, I'll be back again soon with another interview. Until then, you keep safe, keep watching your beautiful rugby across the world, and it's time to say adios from beautiful Cancun in Mexico. Bye for now, everyone.